You finally get your paycheck, open the envelope, and stare at the numbers. At the top is your gross pay, what you actually earned. Right below it, a glaring red line for taxes and insurance deductions leaves your net pay looking surprisingly small. If you look closely at deductions like the payroll tax, lawmakers designed a system that seems perfectly fair on paper. They wrote the law so that this specific tax burden is split exactly 50-50 between you and your employer. But to an economist, that legal mandate is an illusion. When a political decree meets the actual mechanics of a market, the legal assumption snaps under the pressure of reality. This chart shows the labor market and a vertical gap labeled payroll tax. This gap perfectly illustrates what economists call tax incidence. Tax incidence is the true difference between who legally hands the money to the government and who actually absorbs the financial loss by either paying more or earning less. A government can mandate who writes the check, but it cannot override basic market dynamics. The true weight of any tax is settled by an invisible economic struggle, completely independent of a politician's pen. Let's strip this down to a simple transaction. Imagine a city decides to raise revenue by imposing a strict 50-cent tax directly on ice cream sellers for every cone they serve. This chart shows the ice cream market. Taxing sellers shifts the supply curve up by 50 cents, raising prices. If the government taxes buyers, the demand curve drops 50 cents. Either way, the out-of-pocket price and seller's profit land in the exact same spot. Attempting to target a specific side of a market is a mathematical illusion. Regardless of whose name is printed on the tax bill, buyers and sellers will always end up sharing the cost. But just because buyers and sellers both share the pain of a tax, do not assume they divide that pain equally. The breakdown of who pays what is determined by a core economic concept known as elasticity. Elasticity is a measure of desperation. It's your ability to easily walk away from a transaction because you have plenty of alternative options. Look at graph A. Buyers are highly elastic with a flat demand curve. They can easily leave. Sellers are inelastic, stuck with a steep supply curve. Because buyers can walk away, sellers have no leverage and must swallow almost the entire tax burden themselves. In the market's endless tug-of-war, the side with fewer alternatives and greater desperation will always be dragged across the line and forced to pay. This case study photo introduces the 1990 U.S. luxury tax. Congress explicitly designed this policy to extract revenue exclusively from the ultra-wealthy by heavily taxing high-end goods like luxury yachts and private planes. It seemed like a foolproof way to make the rich pay their fair share. But the lawmakers' logic completely ignored the extreme elasticity of wealthy buyers. Facing a massive markup on domestic yachts, the wealthy buyers simply exercised their power to walk away. They had endless alternatives. They could easily spend their millions to upgrade a vacation home, charter a private jet, or just buy a yacht in a different country. The yacht manufacturers, on the other hand, had zero elasticity. They were tied down by massive specialized factories and a highly trained workforce that could not easily transition to building something else overnight. Stuck with inventory they couldn't move, manufacturers were forced to slash their base prices to desperately keep sales going. This led directly to widespread manufacturing losses and mass layoffs for thousands of working-class laborers. A tax weaponized specifically against the rich missed its target entirely and crushed the exact blue-collar workers the politicians usually promise to protect. Economic policies cannot run on moral intentions alone. Whenever a new tax is proposed, we have to ignore the political rhetoric and ask the only question that dictates the outcome: who is actually trapped in the market?